Hey guys, Lee from Straight Woo here. Wanting to speak a little bit about Neptune, the Saturn-Neptune square, and eating humble pie, philosophically. So starting off with the humble pie, not only because this is my fifth or possibly sixth attempt at making this video, thanks to, I think, the upcoming Mercury retrograde in Virgo, which rules for me my third house of communication and writing and speaking. So I hope you'll forgive me if I make little mistakes throughout this recording. take Mercury pity on me. But the real crux of humble pie. Why am I talking about that? I recently realized that I had gotten sucked into the Saturn-Neptune square, or better said, that the Saturn-Neptune square was working through me to show me the limitations of certain beliefs I hold about myself, about my levels of compassion, about my work, many things. Most clearly, and I'd say the only example I can give that I can actually share, because the others are either too personal or too political, would be this Ryan Lochte business. And I'm not just going to look at Ryan Lochte's chart as part of this video. I'm also going to check into Leslie Jones and Martha Stewart. Even Kate Moss, I might check her out a little bit too, because I'm looking for people that have had a certain pattern of things happen to them, which all have to do with Neptune. Now with Ryan Lochte, I made a video not 10 days ago, maybe a week ago. And of course, you can imagine how that turned out. I was taking the mickey out of him. I was crucifying him. Very Neptunian of me. We'll get to that later. But I was crucifying him for his sorry astrological chart and the even sorrier state of transits made to it. And I made up my own hashtag Lochte with the good hair, because even I was laughing at how sticky, slimy PR it seemed that, of course he goes on national television to apologize, and oh, how convenient that your hair is now, a conforming color or suitable color. And it felt good to make fun of him. It felt good. It felt good to make this funny video and recall the moments that he was stupid. And oh god, the pictures. Oh, the guys, there's pictures of him with diamond pave grills. I didn't know those things existed, because I don't really watch the Olympics or sports even. So even that, I was just like, oh, Lochte, what am I going to do with you? And then I never posted the video. Partially because, I don't know, I think it's, okay, it might be in my nature to always be direct and always take the piss out of things, for sure. But firstly, it didn't feel right to use astrology in that way. To use astrology to, throw something else on the funeral pyre of somebody's reputation and personality and sense of self. Because irrelevant to the fact that he's probably done something very stupid and he has lied, has nothing to do with me then having to further crucify him, having to add to that, and using astrology, a craft that I really feel connected to and believe deeply in, and I use to be more human, not less, seemed crap. Secondly, I realized I was getting sucked into the Saturn-Neptune square. A big part of Neptune that is not actually recognized and appreciated is that there is a very strong redeemer, redeemee, seeking redemption, atonement, suffering in the name of redemption. These themes exist. It's a big part of Neptune, and as part of this video, I'm going to reference Liz Green's book, The Astrological Neptune, and even take a quote from somebody quite surprising, Michael Moore, the documentary maker, who flagged up my own humble pie moment for me. Thank you, Michael. Long story short, a big part of Neptune as it plays out in the greater world, in the media, is that we have these heroes, whether they are athletes or models or celebrities, and we let them get to a certain point until we can find one bloody thing about them that we can use to crucify them on. It's like this, although it does relate, of course, to the Christian myth of Jesus and the crucifixion, it relates to many, many, many paradise-themed myths, that there's this fall of grace, that there's an original, fall from grace, excuse me, that there's an original sin from which we all fall from. And so part of the Neptune thing for me is that looking at the pattern of celebrity, and how often we wish our heroes to fall off a pedestal, or we want to be the person who decides to redeem them or not, or we want them to seek redemption. We want them to fail. We want them to feel badly. We want to crucify them. We see the failure in them and it brings up the failure in us, and all we want them to do is suffer for it. In the same way that we subconsciously we think we need to suffer too, that we need to atone, that there are things that we need to sacrifice in the name of the sin of whatever it is that we did that we think is so awful. And to be clear, I'm not excusing him for his actions. He was an idiot. He's kind of always been an idiot, which is why it was so easy to make a video laughing at him and adding to the, adding fuel to the fire. Yeah, Ryan Lochte, idiot. Look at what an idiot he is. I'm not excusing his actions, and nor am I ignoring the role that white privilege and patriarchy has played in this story, because clearly being a white male has gone pretty well for him as part of the story, especially when we contrast it to somebody like Gabby Douglas, who did nothing wrong and yet was still crucified. Crucified on high. We love to love people until we can love to hate them. And the hating is so much more fun than the loving. How sad is that? And this is what the Saturn-Neptune square is calling out in us, because Neptune in Pisces, passionate, compassionate, idealistic, musical, artistic, sensitive, healing. Saturn, disciplined, mature, authority, restrictions, denials, being stuck even. In Sagittarius, which is about optimism, faith, belief, justice. This kind of hero's journey towards experiencing the world in a wider way. These things have been coming into conflict with each other and challenging us to see the places where our compassion doesn't run as deep as we think it does, and to see the places where we've been stuck in our beliefs. Everybody holds this energy within them somewhere. Everybody, unfortunately, including me, because I was so perfect before I before I realized I was wrong. So this is part of Neptune, my friends. Neptune loves a fall from grace. It loves the original sin. It loves the redemption story. It loves to redeem and be redeemed. It loves to choose who is redeemed because of the level of suffering that they have suffered. Neptune loves an atonement. Oh, Lord, an atonement. There cannot be enough atoning with Neptune. So here we are. So reading a passage from Liz Green, The Astrological Neptune, very key book if you want to get deeper into the work of Neptune. Many astrologers are a little too quick to call Neptune spiritual. There are some truly ghastly denizens of the Neptunian waters which make Jaws look like a dish of marinated herring, and which are usually dismissed by euphemisms such as deception and illusion. And I've just told you guys I'm guilty of that. I'm completely guilty of that. When we get into a natal chart reading, we don't often have time to offer a deeper synthesis of what the outer planets mean in a person's chart, unless they're very, very prominently placed. So this is Neptune. Neptune has some ghastly denizens in its waters. It's not just spiritual. It's not just mysticism. It is not just transcending the self. It is also escapism, addiction, the desire to suffer, the desire to atone, almost wanting the fall from grace in ourselves and in each other, which is what we see when we look at people like Ryan Lochte, when we look at people like Leslie Jones, Martha Stewart. And I know a lot of people will have split opinion about this video. Some people will immediately say, basically, fuck this shit. Ryan Lochte even, is an overprivileged asshole white male. He's used his privilege to be able to wreck shop on somebody and lie about it, and it was egregious, and he can never be forgiven. How very Neptunian of you, darling. O thee who have never sinned, who have never made a mistake. It's so easy to throw other people's bodies on the funeral pyre. Especially when we're so perfect. And again, to be clear, I don't agree with his actions. I think he was an idiot. I think he lied. But I think seeing how we react is very telling. There's a sense now, and I really believe it's part of the Saturn-Neptune square, there's a sense now that we just want to crucify everyone. Everyone. We can't wait to find that somebody has something hidden in their shadows. We love to find out about the senator who's a child molester. Why the fuck would you love that, by the way? Why would you love that? There's a child being molested. Why would you love that? Because we love to call people up on their beliefs and to say, oh, your belief is not consistent. And the undertone there is, like mine, because my belief is so consistent. No, it fucking isn't. .com. Why do we love? We love when people get like a DUI or a drug charge or infidelity. Ooh. Infidelity is one of the favorites in America for sure. We love to know that people are unfaithful. People are unfaithful every day. You're unfaithful to yourself. You're unfaithful to your children. You're unfaithful to your spouse. Get over it. Lord have mercy. This is actually, think about the Saturn-Neptune square, not just as Saturn squaring Neptune, but as both of them throwing rays in either direction. So Saturn constraining Pisces, Neptune nebulizing Sagittarius, because one of these Sagittarian shadows is to find one big truth. I've gone on my big, big, big journey, and I've found one big truth. And here's my one big truth. Contrasting that, of course, to give you a sense of how this works, to Gemini, which lies across and can deal with tiny, bite-sized bits of truth that can all come together, cleave together, work together, etc. Sagittarius instead quite often wants to be, and it is the sign of the guru, and the guru has one truth, right? So it is a sign that likes to find a grand, larger, bigger truth that it can subscribe to. So Neptune is nebulizing that. It's nebulizing your sense of what the one big truth is. Saturn is throwing a ray in the other direction, constraining your sense of compassion. Because we have to be honest, Another very Saturn-Neptune square moment. That little boy in the back of the ambulance, Omran. There are limits to our compassion. There are limits. Sharing the story and clicking the little sad face emoji. Do me a favor. I mean, I did it too. But that's a limit. You're not suiting up to go over there. And also, don't give me this thing of like, I donated money. You didn't, big whoop. These are all escapist Neptunian things that we tell ourselves that, oh, I care. I really care so much. You don't care that much. We don't care that much. There are limits to our compassions. There are limits. Saturn throwing a ray to Pisces is showing that. Neptune throwing a ray to Sag is nebulizing our sense of this one big great truth. We're realizing that there's lots of tiny, weird, crappy truths that don't really seem to make a great picture at the end. Life looks weird. A can be true and false, and B, its opposing opinion, can be true and false. There's no such thing as ultimate truth. Burqini ban. Another Saturn-Neptune square moment. Saturn wants to put a boundary and a law and a regulation on something that Neptunian cannot be regulated. Yeah, it seems like a decent idea. We don't want burqas because we're a secular society and we believe in the empowerment of women, etc. ad infinitum. What is the difference between a nun's habit and a burqa, a burqini, and somebody who wears a diving suit? The diving suit and somebody who simply likes to cover up because they have a history of skin cancer? You cannot regulate, Saturn, things that cannot be unregulated, Neptune. Even the refugee crisis. The refugee crisis is the Saturn-Neptune square in our face. We are trying to regulate, Saturn, the movement of a tidal wave of humanity, Neptune, and it cannot be regulated. It would be so clever if laws could fix the refugee crisis. They can't. They absolutely cannot. Now, some laws can help, but it can't solve it because there's no one great truth, and there are limits to our compassion. So I know this is depressing, but it's not depressing. This is reality. Getting in better touch with the reality within you and within human consciousness, great. Another thing, the Saturn-Neptune square, Brexit, very Saturn-Neptune square. Another thing, Trump, very Saturn-Neptune square. These things are being flushed out for us to see them, to understand that there's not one big main culture. You live in London. I lived in London for many years. You live in London and you think, oh, this is what it's like to live in the UK. No, it's not. No, it is not. You're an American and you're quite moderate and you're reasonably liberal but reasonably conservative. You're somewhere in the middle. You think, oh, everybody thinks this way. No, they do not. There is not one great big truth. There are lots of tiny crappy truths. Again, that don't seem to make such a great picture in the end. They would make a shit puzzle. But that's what we are. That's what we have to deal with. We need to face this. So, getting in touch with the Saturn-Neptune square is also getting in touch with the reality of human consciousness. And I reiterate, there are going to be people that hate this fucking video. I get it. I also don't like feeling like an asshole. You think I like this? I don't like this. It sucks. It sucks. And I know some people are going, again, why are you such an asshole? Well, firstly, because I'm an asshole. Secondly, because this is what the Saturn-Neptune square is doing. So what's to be done about it? what do we do with all this reality? What do we do with knowing that we have a part of our chart anyway, natally, where Neptune sits, where we're dying to be redeemed, where we're dying to be, atone for this sense of original sin? Well, what do we do with the fact that Neptune is transiting part of our natal chart? And right now is squaring Saturn, although that won't always be the case. We've got another 14 years of Neptune transit to go through that won't have anything to do with Saturn. Integrate, my friends. Integrate. Own the parts of yourself which you wish didn't exist. Think back to the time you were Orion Lochte. I know I've done it. In fact, I'll give you the time. At least one of the times, because I've done it many times. True fucking story. As always on Straight Woo. I seem to be the only asshole in the spiritual field that just, lays it all out there. But I'm going to do it anyway. Which is, when I was in 6th grade, so I was 11 or 12 for UK listeners. 11-ish, I think. 10, 11 maybe. There was a school dance. And it's one of these super cheesy, crappy school dances, which is basically in your fucking school cafeteria. Yet, somebody's still supposed to ask you to it and you're still supposed to dress up and blah, blah, blah. I, of course, would not dress up because at that time I was a skater chick and I was very into Kurt Cobain and Nirvana and I was not having any of that. So I show up to the school cafeteria and I think I remember that the DJ kind of obligingly put on a bit of grunge type stuff. It might have been Nirvana, but I can't really remember now. And so we were kind of quasi moshing, in the way that very aspirational 10-year-old children from white suburban neighborhoods would do. And at some point, and we were all dressed up in our grunge stuff, vintage rotting cardigans over top of golf t-shirts. And I think I'm not joking that I was wearing my dad's jeans, but with a massive belt around them because I was only about 100 pounds. So they were falling off me. And me and my friends ran into the bathroom all in a group, as girls do at any age in a social setting. And somebody said, "You all are sniffing glue," or something like this. I don't even remember. And I immediately was yeah, we sniffed glue. Yeah, we're sniffing glue. We're so badass. We're sniffing glue. We're getting high. Woo, we're high. And then we all basically proceeded to pretend to be high out of our minds, which I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall. Why didn't mobile phone cameras exist during that time? I would have loved to see myself doing this. And so, clearly we did it to act like badasses. Oh yeah, we sniffed glue in the bathroom of the school dance. We don't give a fuck. Yeah, look at us. And we got caught. And then of course we all start crying and we were I didn't sniff any glue. I never even sniffed any glue in my life. My dad was about to break my ass in half. And of course, it's a very hard thing to come back from, to say oh no, that thing I said that I did, that now I'm in trouble for, I didn't do it. I actually really didn't do it, guys. And I tried to apologize for this thing. Does it not sound like the Lochte story to you? Oh God, another time I can remember, it's all coming out now. Ugh. I remember one of my really good friends, also in this kind of year, I should check out where Neptune was for me at that time. And she was dating a guy, we're 10 years old. She was boyfriend and girlfriend with a guy at the time that I kind of fancied. And as we were 10 years old and we thought we were way more knowledgeable than we did, people were saying that they were having sex. Ooh, sex. And I don't think they were at all. Were they kind of maybe messing around a little bit, pushing the boundaries? Maybe. Yeah, maybe. So this rumor spreads around, and she was one of the types of girls that, let's say, developed a little bit earlier than the rest, and I was the polar opposite. I was a beanpole. I weighed 100 pounds until I was 17. And which, reflecting back on that, I should have appreciated that period more. That is not the, dear listener, that is no longer the case. Do not worry about me. And so she had made fun of me from time to time about being so thin. And I hit back at these rumors saying, well, there's no way that they could have sex, or at least she must be on the bottom because she's too fat to be on top. And she was supposed to be one of my best friends. Asshole move. Super asshole move. And of course, she confronted me about it. Well, I don't know why you said that. Well, you know, waterworks. I even called her house. She wouldn't pick up. She wouldn't answer the phone. I called the other line at her house. Her mom picks up and she says, oh, hi, Lee. How are you? Because her mom, of course, has no idea. And I'm like basically sobbing on the other end saying, I said something really horrible about Jessica. Neptune. Hey, Neptune. I mean, we have all done it. We have all been the asshole. We have all been the liar. We have all been the person that makes up a fucking story. Get over it. The vitriol you have for Lochte on a subconscious level is so linked to the shame that you feel for yourself on a subconscious level. Yeah, guys, he's an asshole. He's also a liar, but come on, comparing him to O.J. Simpson? He didn't murder anybody yet. I mean, give him a chance at least to work up to that level. He hasn't beat his wife yet. Give him a chance. You know? Like, let him work for it before we condemn him. Or the other thing, Michael Vick, you know, people comparing him to O.J. Simpson and Michael Vick. I mean, Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. It looked like he wrecked shop on a gas station bathroom. He pissed on the wall. He might have ruined something. Who knows? He was a bro. He was a total bro abroad, acting like a jerk, acting like a moron, and he deserves to be called out for it. No big deal. But Christ almighty. O.J. Simpson? Guys, let's talk. Not to mention, why can't we let it go? I think maybe we can't let it go for Lochte because we can't let it go for ourselves. That thing that we think that we did that was so bad and so shameful, we can't let go of it. So why would we be able to let go of Lochte's shame? We can't. And here's something I wanted to read you guys from Michael Moore. It was on his Facebook page, and it's part of what made me want to do this video. The comments to my Ryan Lochte post are an amazing insight into the American psyche. The anger, the outrage towards him is overwhelming. The fact that he was a crime victim matters not to most. All sides agree now, and the videotape proves the guard pulled a gun on him to extort money after he already paid the gas station for the minor damage he did. Thanks to his inebriated exaggeration of what actually happened, he has been crucified. Very Neptunian, my friends. He has acknowledged this, he's apologized for it. But this is not enough for those who've never made a mistake and never told a lie. There's something else we want. What is it? Why do they now mention his name in the same breath as O.J. Simpson, Michael Vick, and a host of athletes who've been arrested for physical and sexual assault? Seriously, guys, we need to talk. Why this reaction? I'm not trained in psychology, but here's my 2 cents about this rage and its origins. As babies, most of us are made to feel very special because we are. Throughout childhood, there's an accepted narcissism within us. We remain special little people, and it feels great. The world revolves around us. Every need is taken care of. But then we become adults. And in no time, we are no longer so very special. We have to take care of ourselves. There's no trophy for everyone on the team. Life is hard. Debts grow. Not everyone who meets you wants to go out with you. But there's much good in adult life. And one way we all get to feel a little better is the pleasure we receive from living vicariously through the lives of others who have quote unquote made it. Heroes, celebrities, rock stars, they all get to have an acceptable form of narcissism that we can identify, and we like it. The world seems to wait on them, adore them, revolve around them. The list of the famous, all treated as if they were special, is varied and long. Most of us aren't on that list. That's just the way it is, and we accept it. But should one of these famous people slip, fall, or just rub us the wrong way, watch out. That lost child in us explodes, and in an instant, a narcissistic swimmer can go from being revered to being despised. No understanding, no forgiveness. Over and out. So that was interesting to me. Michael Moore. Didn't think Michael Moore would ever be my spiritual teacher, but here we are. Saturn-Neptune square, dissolving beliefs once again. I think he's right. I know that was what I was doing. I'm telling you that's what I was doing. I couldn't wait to crucify him. I was literally building the cross in my small flat here. I had some, 2x4s spare. Yeah, we love this thing. We love to crucify people. We love to crucify ourselves. Most importantly, God help us. We love to crucify ourselves. We love to believe that there's something that we did that's so bad that we can never recover from it. Well, even that in itself is kind of narcissistic, because most of us have never done anything that important. I have never done anything that important, sadly. I've definitely hurt a lot of people's feelings, and I've definitely been an absolute asshole for large chunks of my life. If you're ever willing to stomach it, my story is on the blog, and I cannot overstate what I used to be like before I became a walking beam of light on the spiritual path, that is. Sarcasm. But I can't overstate what I used to be like. I genuinely used to operate in that reactive hurt and be hurt manner all the time, and it's exhausting. And if we can't take it out on the people closest to us, the second best thing is to be able to just take it out on, the football team. I hate that asshole. Ryan Lochte, white privileged jerk. So there's this fight to be important and feel important. And there's this fear that we are so wounded and so sick and dirty that we can't be. And there's this great myth and idea that if we are cleansed by the waters, so that's even baptism, Neptune, think about it. If we're cleansed in some way, if we're made more spiritual, if we're made more clean and pure, if we can atone enough, if we can suffer enough, if we can just suffer enough, it'll all be worth it. So now to illustrate some of these points, we're going to take a look at a few charts. So here we are, in the name of all the people that would love to go back to Eden, of which we are all included in that group. Let's check out Ryan Lochte, poor Lion Lochte with good hair, and check out what his chart looks like. So first things first, we don't have a birth time for Ryan, so unknown birth time, and hence no house divisions in the chart here. First things first, Neptune. Neptune is transiting Pisces, of course, and when I'm talking about the Saturn-Neptune square, I'm talking about just this. Neptune here in Pisces and Saturn here in Sag, or Sagittarius. The green glyphs on the outside are transits, and the black glyphs on the inside are Ryan's actual natal chart. So everything we can pretty much count on is being exactly where it should be, bar the moon, because the moon moves quite quickly, about 13 to 15 degrees a day, and since it's just here into Scorpio, it could be either Libra or further up the Scorpio line. It's likely that it's a Scorpio moon, but we don't know. So what was happening on August 18th? And the transit dates that I chose were August 18th. August 14th was the fateful night that he urinated somehow on some gas station bathroom. 18th is when it all came to the fore that, hey, Brother Man was lying. So Let's first talk about enclosure. Enclosure doesn't really get a lot of space-time. Enclosure is when Saturn and Mars are with 7 degrees of each other, and effectively they create kind of like a little astro prison. And I jokingly usually say that this is like kind of Monopoly astro prison because just like in Monopoly where you get sent to jail, you do not pass go, you do not collect $200. It's just going to dick you off a little bit for a few turns and then you're going to get out of jail. Enclosure works the same way, usually because Mars moves pretty quick. So this period where it's 7 degrees before and after Saturn usually moves, so that would be 14 degrees total. It could be about a month maximum. Enclosure, how does it work? It kind of, again, creates this astro prison where physically a natal planet can be enclosed by both Saturn and Mars, which are known as the two malefics of the zodiac. Saturn being a bit more denying, stuck, rejecting, humiliating, cold. Mars being more provoking, irritable, angry, frustrated, impassioned, and hot. And they're on either side. And on the day of that moment when everything came out, and even the days beforehand, Ryan's Uranus, his natal Uranus, was enclosed by Saturn and Mars. Again, we don't have a birth time. I'm pretty much guessing that somehow Sag and Pisces are probably related to this, maybe the 6th house and the 9th. Maybe the 5th and the 9th, or excuse me, the 5th and the 10th. So representing something along the lines of his career and work. And especially the 10th house, I'm thinking even could be this because it would talk about his public profile and his reputation. So Uranus is an outer planet. Usually wouldn't be that kind of a big of a deal, but what does Uranus square quite perfectly? His Mercury. And I immediately looked at his Mercury thinking, okay, he's had a very, very, like, egregious moment where he has very clearly lied, not just to the public, but I think even to himself, because it seems like he believed his bullshit. And his Mercury looks pretty good. I mean, it's not under the beams of the sun, so it's not being, like, let's say, debilitated or weakened. It is not retrograde. It is in the home, domicile, and the exaltation sign for Mercury. It is an evening star Mercury, another kind of traditional way of looking at the 4 phases of Mercury. So all in all, I would have looked at this Mercury and said, hey, that's a pretty strong Mercury. And even further, his Mercury very closely sextiles Saturn. Saturn, yes, can be rejecting and denying, but it can also be stabilizing. It can also give people a greater sense of maturity or authority when they speak. If you've ever seen a Ryan Lochte interview, you know that is not the case for poor Ryan Lochte. And that's because there are other things in the chart occurring that offset the strength of his, or the natural strength, let's say, of his nice natal Mercury. So not only does Mars and Saturn enclose Uranus physically, by ray, meaning like if we were to imagine little rays coming over here, they would have perfectly enclosed Mercury here. And by ray, it would have perfectly enclosed his Chiron. And by ray, it would have perfectly enclosed the asteroid Achilles, as in Achilles' heel. So we've got a bit of a mutable grand cross here in Ryan's chart being activated on all layers by the Saturn-Mars enclosure. Other stuff happening in the chart. Natally, he has Chiron in Gemini. Interestingly, Gemini does have to do with the mind and with communication and with speaking. So even though he has this kind of nice looking natal Mercury, that makes me go, oh, interesting. Chiron, a point of pain, an area of wounding, in Gemini, which is one of the other rulers of Mercury. So the way I work with Chiron is I will look at the sign that it sits in, and then I look at that ruled sign to know more. So I look at Chiron, Gemini, Mercury rules Gemini, or excuse me, Gemini rules Mercury. And then we find it over here. I would know more if I knew what his houses were, and therefore where this kind of sat in his natal chart. But I also know, because I work with the asteroids, that the asteroid Narcissus is within 1 degree of his Mercury. And of course, it's been said many, many times that he is a narcissist, that he's very vain, that he talks about himself, etc. Perhaps with Chiron relating to Mercury is the wound this narcissistic way of thinking, of speaking, of acting, of being could be. But most importantly, I just wanted to show that on a very superficial level, we could have looked at Mercury in Virgo. Sextile Saturn. All these things look good. Even Mercury square Uranus, guys, is not bad. People that have that I can think of off the top of my head are Alfred Hitchcock, George Clooney, Justin Timberlake, Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney has Mercury square Uranus. That speaks volumes, doesn't it? So on the low side, we could say somebody, that every now and again says something they shouldn't. But on the high side could be somebody very, very innovative and unique and kind of rebellious or independent or unique, probably, about the way they communicate. For sure, we cannot say that Ryan's way of communicating is not boring. It is certainly unique in its nature. But by transit, just kind of a shit show, guys. Neptune over top of the Achilles, Neptune directly opposing the natal Mercury and Narcissus, and all of these points in kind of a mutable grand cross getting activated. So that is what it looks like in the chart of somebody like Ryan Lochte when things like this happen. And let's contrast Lochte's chart with someone super lovely, the lovely Leslie Jones. If you don't know who Leslie Jones is, she is one of the super hilarious comedians who is in the new Ghostbusters. And she has received no end of social media, online hatred, trolling, you name it, she has had it in spades. What is interesting here is to look at the fact that Neptune, as in Lochte's chart, can talk about a fall from grace. In her chart, I'm going to show you how it's different and the activation is different. It becomes very clear when we look at asteroids where this has come from and what's happening there. Also because Leslie did nothing wrong. I mean, she was in a movie and people just have gone after her like in a jugular way. But still this feeling of like being sacrificed, of being on, like hanging on the cross somewhere, just the poor crows pecking at your little body as you hang and just wonder, why are people being like this? So Neptune transits, not always good, folks, not always about spiritual crap, quite often about a fall from grace or some grand moment of disillusionment. And I wouldn't doubt in Leslie's case that it's a big disillusionment with celebrity as a whole, being in the public sphere as a whole. Like Ryan Lochte, we don't have a birth time for her, so no house divisions. I wouldn't be surprised if in Leslie's chart, the 7th house, which is about marriage and business partners, but also about open enemies, I wouldn't be surprised if one of these houses were that 7th house, or one of these signs wasn't ruling the 7th house, because she seems to get a larger than average amount of blowback. There's obviously some very crappy reasons for that too. Very poor reactionary, racist ways of thinking for that way too. Some very patriarchal bullshit ways of thinking for that that all are also not just likely, but I'm sure are at play in the case of Leslie Jones. But I wouldn't be surprised again if her 7th house was quite prominently packed. If you think about somebody like Barack Obama, he is a 7th house Leo sun, I believe. and he has had his share of opposition, we can say. So having that a lot of planets in that area of the chart is not bad. It's just it can talk about having this dynamic play out in your life. So in Leslie's case, where is Neptune transiting? Here in Pisces, and it's directly across from her natal sun. Directly across. I mean, here we're at like 11 and some change. Here we're at 14. So at one point it was, now it's retrograde. It would have been almost bang on an exact opposition to her sun. And from my memory, although I called up the transits of 24th August for the most recent kind of troll online Twitter attack, she's had this off and on for ages. So I wouldn't be surprised if the previous transit point when Neptune was exactly opposite her sun was when she had the last kind of spate of these things going on. So Neptune very strongly opposing the sun. And what else is going on? Nasus, the asteroid user and abuser, is making a perfect T-square to Neptune and the Saturn-Mars conjunction. So if we were to draw in aspects here, there would just be the most perfect, I say perfect, perfectly formed but shittily placed T-square. And this is her natal Nasus. This is not the transiting Nasus, which is there, and also, potentially putting some little baddie rays over here. And not to mention Nasus, this would have been for everyone though, so not specific to Leslie. Nasus by transit was also square Achilles. So there was that extra dimension, but most powerfully it's the T-square that's formed by Neptune, Saturn, Mars, and Nasus being formed. Now who's Nasus? Nasus is a liar, a total liar. In the sign of Gemini for dear old Leslie, I would kind of wonder, and also, I mean, by the way, it's not just one T-square, it's two. So there's another T-square that possibly develops 1, 2, 3. So we've got 2. I would wonder for dear old Leslie, Gemini, is it somebody that's supposed to be a friend, communications contact, even somebody that handles her web, her IT, her blog? Of course, it did happen in Twitter, which Gemini is a very super Twitter sign because it's little bits and pieces of communication flying around. Even if I was her astrologer, I might even say, drop Twitter. Just fucking walk away. It could have also been having to do with a sibling or somebody that feels like a sibling. And the reason why I'm bringing up Nasus, again, user, abuser, wolf in sheep's clothing, somebody who is revengeful and lying, somebody who also takes down prominent people, because Nasus was a centaur that eventually, in his own way, I won't go into the deeper part of the myth, ended up killing Hercules, the strongest man that's ever lived. So it can also be talked about taking down a great person, especially almost from beyond the grave, from a hidden place. So it kind of fits the vibe. To contrast, still a crappy Neptune transit, still talking about the Neptune square here, Neptune-Saturn square, but this is like an attack and kind of crappy rays going towards Leslie's sun and ego and sense of self and her public self, but it's activated by somebody else that's a user-abuser. So I hope that's clear. In Lochte's chart, it was very much related to activating some very poor points in his chart. In Leslie's, it's about activating, yes, a poor point, but an external point. So it happens in a very different way. It's not exacerbating her natal debilities, let's say. This is external meets internal meets Neptune square. Very, very different turn of events. Not to mention, she's also had a huge amount of support, and even further, Uranus, which can talk about technology, at least in part, is also almost perfectly opposite transiting Chiron. But at the same time, Mercury, Jupiter, and Venus were all clustering around the same point. And Leslie got huge amounts of support online from people, kind of blowing back against the blowback to say, fuck that, Leslie, we love you, you're awesome, you're a great actress, you've inspired us, you've been so wonderful, etc. So I think this little bit here, kind of cuddling up to Uranus, which again can be about things like technology, things like social media, kind of demonstrative of the love and the affection that she got back in terms of that. In Ryan's chart, there was no such joy. In Ryan's chart, I think there was much more Mercury, Jupiter, which is analysis, critique. It also fits for her, right? Because it is critical in Virgo, analytical in Virgo. Virgo can be a little bit of a nag or a bully. It can, on the real deep shadow side, it can go that way. So Mercury, communications, Jupiter expanding that, going on Uranus can also talk about almost both sides. First the amount of online criticism, and then the people coming back in support of her to say, no, Leslie, we love you. So that's how it looks like in the chart of somebody like Leslie Jones. Okay, moving on to Kate Moss, the ultra-famous supermodel of supermodels, Kate Moss. Again, no birth time here, so no house divisions. And the transit date is so long ago that most of us have forgotten it, 15th September 2005. At that moment in time, the Daily Mail or the Daily Mirror, I really can't remember which one of these publications ran a story on the front page showing her full-on blatantly using cocaine. Now, on that day, she lost a great deal of money in, let's say, endorsements, just as Lochte has done himself. And again, interesting to check out what was happening in the world of Neptune, because hers is less apparent than Lochte's and Leslie Jones, but it's still there. Probably most importantly, at that time, Kate had Chiron just kind of moving back towards a retrograde over her natal sun, Chiron being a point of pain or wounding. And I'm kind of guessing that she's probably a 10th house sun. Also because she's just she's so public, she's so out there. Could be 11th house as well, or even 9th. But somewhere, let's say on the top of the chart, I would have assumed this was her sun. And for somebody whose career is so much linked with external sense of reputation and pride and visibility, etc., Chiron moving over that sun, it's a slow transit, it's a painful transit. So first things first, she had Chiron moving over her natal sun. Secondly, Neptune transiting was right on top of her natal Jupiter. It can kind of blow things up or make things larger than what they actually are. And both of those points were squaring Mars and squaring the moon. Now, Mars square Neptune, which is part of the Saturn square Neptune thing as well, because it's not just Saturn square Neptune. Mars is right there now. It's applying into its own square now with Neptune. When that happens, there can be issues with lack of clarity. There can be a drive but no destination. There can be a sense of like a bit of drunk warrior on the prowl, like somebody that has a lot of drive but doesn't know what to do with it, or is like handling the sword but fumbling with it. At the same moment, she had her natal Neptune, 30, 60, 90, almost perfectly square, transiting Uranus. Uranus can be about trauma or a break or something that feels like it crashes into our lives. And most certainly, she'd been pictured in the papers for quite some time, looking pretty rough and partying, etc. But suffice it to say, it had been always, it felt like, at least from my perception, that it was one of those things that everybody knew about but nobody cared about. And this seemed to come out of nowhere like, boom, and almost obliterate her career in a way. Interesting to know that at the same time, Karma and Venus were very, very, very tightly conjunct. And at that time, part of her partying thing was that she was dating a guy, married, I'm not sure, a guy named Pete Doherty, who was a pretty major drug user himself. So interesting that Karma and Venus were so close on that day. And double interesting, Ceres and Pholus. Ceres is the great mother of the asteroid goddesses. Talks about an archetypal mother role that a lot of women end up playing. She was a mother at this point, and Pholus is a centaur that at least in part has to do with altered states of consciousness. He was a master augur, which is A-U-G-U-R, so kind of soothsayer or seer. He was actually one of the, let's say that he was quite benevolent anyways as a centaur, but he was one of the top and most talented ogres of the centaurs, and he was even trusted with in holding or taking care of the sacred wine, that when the centaurs get one whiff of it, they become almost maniacal with desire for this wine. So in fact, when I think about the wine, I don't know if I think about it as wine or other things that can alter one's state of consciousness. On an entirely different level, and not applying to Kate Moss, I can also think about Pholus sometimes in the realm of sacred plant medicines, which she was not indulging in sacred plant medicines at this time. But interesting, the Ceres-Pholus conjunction, because there was a huge call on, can she be a mother? Should we not be remanding her child back into custody because she's unfit to be a mother? So literally, asteroid Ceres, the great mother, conjunct Pholus, altered states of consciousness. Interesting link up there. And here we are, one final chart for our Neptune lesson, and why Neptune is just not about spirituality, but also about lots of shady stuff. Martha Stewart. Sorry, I just zoomed past her birth info. We do have a birth time for Martha, so we know where things happened, and that's when it gets interesting. The transit I picked was 15th June 2002. The date I was looking for was thereabouts, so I just chose 15th June as like a midway point. And again, another thing that happened so long ago, we can hardly remember it, but Martha Stewart went to jail for insider trading. She was convicted. Interestingly, 2002 was when her friend that she did the deal with or whatever got caught. She herself was not, I think, indicted until 2004. But this is interesting. Talk about a slow burn. We think of Neptune as being so soft and misty and dreamy. Slow burn, my friends. Cold, watery little burn. Even corrosive, because, you leave anything in the water long enough, it breaks down. So where is Neptune? At the time she's doing the insider deal and her friend is getting caught out for it, Neptune is across from the natal sun. Neptune here is at about, again, 11 and some change, maybe 10 and some change. Her sun is 10 degrees 58. Fall from grace. Cold burn didn't happen and actually come forth until a little bit later, but it did indeed happen. Interesting also to note, around that time, the North Node, which can be quite a fatalistic karmic little point, was conjoined to Saturn, which cuts things off, denies things, breaks things down. And in the 8th house, which amongst other things involves stockbroking. Sometimes astrology is just too funny. And the 8th house stockbroking connection, you can check that out with Deborah Holding's book, The Houses, Temples of the Sky. 2nd house being about our earned income, and 8th house being about places we get other money. So it could be inheritance, it could be stockbroking. It's more like speculative, let's say it can be. Although speculation is also a 5th house thing, as it involves games of risk and gambling. Yeah, so interesting that the sun was opposing her natal moon and her natal Ceres. Interesting that if the North Node was over here, the South Node was just right next here, next to Pluto in the House of Money. So also a pretty clear picture about a fall from grace. Let's continue to use the same word, fall from grace. Chiron's part to play. Chiron was on top of also the asteroid Narcissus, interestingly. And in fact, I didn't even mean to put it in her chart, but it's there. And Karma as an asteroid was also opposing Chiron natally and Pluto natally. Quite interesting stuff, I'd say. So this is what I wanted to show you. Neptune is not just watery, nice spiritual stuff. It's also fall from grace. It's also getting knocked off the pedestal. It's getting hung on the cross. The Saturn-Neptune square is just about these things. It's about understanding our limits of humanity, understanding that our beliefs have a limit, understanding that laws have a limit, understanding that we cannot limit everything, that we cannot rule everything, that we cannot discipline and boundary everything, that there's a part of human life that can be structured, and then there's a part that's deeply unstructured, and that we need both. The Neptune square is also about, once again, my truth and your truth are both true and both false. There is no great big truth out there. Lots of tiny crappy truths. Tiny crappy truths. Maybe I'll make that the tagline of this video. So that's it, folks. We've looked at some charts. We've talked some chat. I've told you embarrassing childhood stories. I'd say this video is truly done. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. You want to talk Neptune, you want to talk Neptune in your chart, Neptune by transit. Let's do it. I love you guys, but I also love to leave you, and I will see you soon. Ciao.